every conversation is an opportunity, not just to sell the person on your product, but to get them to fall in love with the thing that you're doing and building. And so one thing that we've done early on is like we have conversations with people regardless of whether we can sell to them, regardless of whether they're a hire or not. We try to help as many people as we can, because I think the vision in the long run is that the more you put yourself out there, the more you be consultative in nature, the more you just try to have good karma and help people in whatever they're trying to do, the more that's going to come back to you.
Welcome to Founded and Funded. I'm Sabrina Albert, a partner at Madrona, and today I'm joined by Patrick Thompson and Austin Hay, co-founders at Clarify. These two are repeat founders with experience in product, data, and go-to-market, and are now tackling one of the most frustrating systems in enterprise software, the CRM. With Clarify, they are pioneering what they call autonomous CRM, an approach where software doesn't just assist sellers, it autonomously drives workflows, prioritizes outreach, and manages pipeline without constant human input. In this conversation, Patrick, Austin, and I dig into what they've learned from scaling and selling their first company, what finally pushed them to try to reinvent the CRM from the ground up, and why they believe the next wave of GTM software will be autonomous by design. If you're a founder or sales leader rethinking your revenue stack or wondering whether AI can really do the work for you, this episode is for you. Well, let's start with the founding story. You both had other startup experiences before jumping into Clarify, and I'm curious, what made you decide to start Clarify, and why did you decide to tackle such a legacy industry, a large one at it?
Yeah, well, we like to joke that it's a little bit of a romantic story because I was one of Patrick's first customers when he was building a prior company called Iteratively. I really fell in love with actually Patrick and Andre and the way they approached customer-centric problems. Patrick and I stayed in touch kind of over the years ever since. And a couple summers ago, we got together in New York. And as the story goes, basically we'd been thinking a lot about the CRM space. I had been thinking about it from the perspective of coming from Ramp. I'd spent around 2 years there watching as we spent millions of dollars to effectively rebuild the same architecture that lots of companies before them had kind of built and failed. And Patrick was working at Amplitude and kind of experienced the exact same set of problems, like really, really smart people, tons of money, talented engineers, but effectively building a huge stack on top of legacy platforms. And nothing in that stack was incorporating all the modern lessons that we'd learned from data hygiene, data collection, taxonomy, and the CDP space. And so when we got together in New York, I remember sitting down for dinner, I was like, or maybe it was lunch, and I was like, okay, well, I'll share my idea first, and you tell me what you think. And as we shared the idea, we kind of realized that it was actually the exact same one. It was the premise of what would happen if you take all the lessons around a customer data platform and apply that to a piece of legacy software like a customer relationship management platform. And there's a lot we could talk about, but I think at its core, it was this idea that CDP really invented a much more modern, flexible, kind of customer-centric piece of software. It captured event data, which was kind of a new marketing piece of jargon that now everybody knows and loves. And it was to have the architecture and flexibility to kind of combine the data elements that we've become used to from a marketing perspective with the sales platform. And I think since then, it's obviously taken on its own life, and we've really leaned into the idea of contextless data. So being able to take almost any type of data source and pull it into the platform and allow you to actually kind of drive a go-to-market motion from there. But when it first started, we actually really brought the lessons from, I think, the CDP space.
Yeah, I think the one thing of spending about 5 years working on CDP is just helping companies put these massive reference architectures together where your CRM was just at the core of it. But you have to kind of bolt on all these other providers, really try to get value out of it. And so when we were talking about the problems and the amount of spend and the amount of tools required to kind of build a modern go-to-market team, with dozens of tools, we thought this is a problem that's worth solving and effectively built a company around it.
I'd say most startups would be very intimidated to go after the $100 billion plus market of CRM. There's a lot of incumbents in the space, Salesforce, HubSpot, a bunch of new, startup players. Why do you think there's a specific why now behind building the company and going after this, huge antiquated industry?
In the context of why now, we're at this turning point just as an industry with AI. And so when you think about the different areas that you can actually go address, this was a one that was effectively ripe for disruption. And for us, in particular as a team, especially as a co-founding team, like there was no other opportunity that we wanted to go tackle that was bigger and bolder than this one. And we felt like the timing was right. We felt like we had the right team, and we were pretty excited about it. Like there's nothing else I'd rather be doing myself. Like this is exactly what I want to be working on.
I love that. And Austin, maybe you can share a little bit about how you're seeing some companies that are ripping out their traditional CRM systems, be that Salesforce or others, and building things or stitching together things internally, or even just leveraging Clarify to do it.
I have worked in RevTech for 10 to 15 years now, and I have integrated and managed pretty much every MarTech and RevTech tool under the sun. And what I still remember when we first started talking to people a summer or two ago about, hey, what's the number one pain you have with legacy solutions? It was one, it just is so painful. It's a joyless experience. And two, it's price. So I know we're going to talk in a little bit about our price and some innovation there. But the number one thing was joy. It was this idea of, hey, it's just hard to use. And actually, I think there's some fundamental relationship here between that experience and the law of last clicks, which is to say, you want to reduce the number of clicks that somebody has to convert. It's the same thing that happens for a salesperson every single day inside their CRM. So if it takes 5 to 10 seconds for them to get to an action or an outcome, they're going to be joyless. They're not going to want to enter the data that they want. And the whole model of CRM is built in this premise that, hey, we built a database and all we need is the human to enter the data. And so I think what I'm seeing when I talk to people is this very big willingness to try something new, because that assumption of, hey, I have to do work in order to get value has just been lingering for so long and people are tired of it. So it's really interesting in that, when we talked about activation energy and what would be the hesitations for people moving from a different solution to Clarify, I thought it'd be like data integrity, and I thought it'd be security, all of the classic things that an SMB and enterprise account will want. But actually, I think all that is being overcome by the joy and hope for the future. The idea that, hey, I actually will have a tool that's designed, purpose-built for me as a founder or sales operator, and it's actually really joyful to use. It's not going to take me 10 seconds to get to an account record. It's not going to take me a minute to get to some page. If I have a question about the people I know in New York because I'm visiting, I can get the answer really quickly. These are all the hopes and dreams that people have had with the CRM for the last 15 years, and it's just kind of remained silent. So I actually think the thing that is driving a lot of people to Clarify right now is not, hey, I'm going to get some specific value. It's the hope and the joy that the solution we've designed is bringing them. And especially with the fact that we've built this in basically a year, it's really, really valuable, and AI is only getting better every day. So there's also this anticipation of, well, if I can already talk to my meetings and get insights, if I can already look at a table and run an insight query, it's going to be so much more powerful in 6 months. I'm here for the ride.
I think one of the goals that we have, that somebody uses Clarify at a company and then they refuse to join another company because they don't have Clarify.
Yeah.
If that's the type of product that we want to build, that they love it so much that that shapes the way that they think about defining their career path.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, having worked at organizations where we're on legacy incumbents, I will never use them again.
Totally.
Because the tools that you use shape the work that you do.
And it's not even legacy incumbents either. When I was at Ramp, there was a tool that we're using for productivity, and our CTO Kareem always used to say, let the operators pick the tools because they're the ones doing the work. And all of us wanted this one tool. And it wasn't even a legacy incumbent. We just had a different tool besides this well-known one in the productivity space.
Yeah.
And it was so bad that we were protesting to our CEO to try to get this productivity tool, right? So it doesn't even have to be a legacy provider. There are often alternatives right in market. And we want people to fall in love with Clarify, even over our direct competitors and over legacy providers.
Yeah, I love that. Nobody wants to spend time manually adding a new deal opportunity into Salesforce. I think we've all been there. And if you could just have it automatically in the background, be doing those sort of things for you so different people can actually focus on what brings them most joy. I love that kind of concept. And then just empowering them to be more productive at their jobs, right? And allowing them to do the fun things. One thing that I've also heard from customers is that they like how you're reinventing the business model, right? With this new wave of AI, you don't no longer shouldn't just have to pay for subscription-based, seat-based kind of ways of thinking. How have you guys thought about the business model fundamentally? I know you guys are exploring different ways to price the product. How are you thinking about it?
So I think, generally in the context of AI, I feel like most applications are going to be a race to zero, right? So we're not charging for CRUD anymore. Like we charge for the agent. We only charge when our agent does work for you. It's effectively a usage-based model. So our CRM, think of our CRM as completely free, right? You get a free CRM, and what we monetize is the agent that does work on your behalf. You can kind of think about it as a teammate who's doing all of those actions for you, and that's what you're paying for. And so this is something that I think is radically different than every other competitor that we have in market, which is charging you based off seats. I had the fortune of working at Amplitude where we had, 800-person company where we had 400 Salesforce seats, and we're paying, 7 figures for Salesforce at the time. But half our company didn't have access to customer data. We think that's a huge problem. We want everyone inside your organization to have access to customer data because that's effectively the fuel that drives growth. And effectively all you're paying for is our agent. And if our agent's great, you use it more, great, we make more money, but you get more value. And if you don't like some of the features that our agent does, you can turn them off and save cost.
One concept that you've talked a lot about is this idea of autonomous CRM. I think that's a new shift, and some of the other words you've used are around ambient intelligence and kind of bringing to life what a CRM should be doing for you. Can you share a little bit more about what those two kind of terms mean to you guys?
Yeah, and I think let's go talk a little bit about the pain points with existing CRMs to start with. One is data quality is always a challenge, which is, I'd say, been that way for decades. The other is that it requires a lot of manual data entry. So when we thought about how do we solve some of the challenges that CRMs are plagued by, how do we, one, improve data quality, but also help automate as much of the time spent by sellers and founders and reps putting data into the CRM? And that's really where, when we think about autonomous go-to-market, it's really trying to reduce a lot of the human input and make it so that your tools are really working for you and not against you. And speaking as a founder who set up one of these tools for our last startup, I was spending hours inside of these legacy CRMs, and they weren't really giving me a ton of value, but I was told that, hey, I should be doing this, and this is the best practice. So when we really think about the principles of building autonomous go-to-market at Clarify, it's how do we build things that actually provide you value, take work off your plate so that you can spend more time working with your customers and growing the business, less time just doing manual work.
So it's this shift essentially from autonomy or automation to autonomy, and allowing the system to actually go and do all the work in the background on its own, essentially. So you don't actually have to have the human in the loop to do a lot of these manual things, right?
Yeah, and if you think about marketing automation or sales automation, this term automation has existed for decades, right? We've had many companies try to go solve the automation side. I think the difference in the context of AI or autonomous go-to-market is the fact that we have agents now that can take action and can problem solve and ration that you didn't have previous to this. So a lot of what we're building at Clarify is how do we incorporate agents or AI at the core of the workflows that we're doing? But effectively, it is a lot of automation done autonomously.
So how does this work today? If a customer comes to you, how do they get up and running? What are some of the things that the agents are doing in the background already for you that historically maybe you couldn't have done or a human would have been doing in the past?
Think about the entire journey for the end user. So it'd be a founder, an operator, a seller, sales VP. What do they do in a day? They prospect, they find people, they go on LinkedIn, they send emails. They have to reach out to those customers. They have to schedule calls. They have the call. Everybody's recording calls these days. And then in the manual workflow way, they're taking that call data, they're kind of transcribing or creating the emails that they send. And then afterwards, they have to remember to follow up. They have 5, 6, 7 steps to get to the final deal creation. And at every single step, there's a touch point that goes back to the CRM, usually to inform a CRO or a revenue leader about how is this deal progressing? How is my pipeline doing? How is my business doing? And so when we talk about automation and administrative work, that takes up 20 to 30% of a seller's life. People don't realize that the vast majority of the work and what defines a great seller is doing that work in a critical way. And so not only are we thinking about, hey, what's the next generation of automation? Because you back up 5 years, people were using tools like Zapier still. They were kind of using out-of-box integrations to move data from one point to another in order to kind of put systems on top of their legacy CRM to do this work. But we're really saying, hey, actually, no, you should just be able to show up with your inbox, get all that stuff out of box naturally from Clarify. When you log into Clarify, we automatically create deals for you. We automatically send the emails for you. We automatically allow you to peruse, the meetings that you've recorded and ask questions, and then maybe draft an email. We automatically remind you from the email that the person you were emailing never responded. Like imagine snoozing your CRM. To me, that is like really the power where you don't have to think about what happens in the sales process. It's already been thought of for you.
Yeah, I love that concept. And I think one of the issues with, I guess, if you just go back a few years, is that there's so many tools that all of these people, they're berated with a bunch of different offerings. And one of the things that you just talked about, Austin, is that you can just easily get up and running, right? It's kind of like a one-stop shop in a lot of ways. And so I love that concept of, hey, you can just connect your email inbox and we could do all these things for you. We have these agents essentially that are running in the background doing these intelligent tasks on your behalf. Do you think about it a little bit like it's a coworker or like an employee that you can work with? Is that a concept that
Yeah.
that resonates with you guys, or not so much?
It's an interesting concept. We don't personify our agents, right? We don't give them a name, although we joke about it every so often. It's like, we have a CSM named Devin. Maybe we should build a Devin support agent, right? And that's I think very common these days. It's a question of like, is that the model that we're going to have 2-3 years down the line, or is this more of a flash in the pan? In the context of humans interacting with agents, I think that's going to be around for now until the end of time. I think the hardest part is just how do you personify the work that we do. And so for us, we're a lot more trying to design it where it just seamlessly integrates and you don't have to think about the AI running versus having to actually interact with the AI. And this is the biggest difference between designing an agent versus designing more ambient AI. As we focus a lot of our time on the design side of just making it just work, right? Batteries included, no manual required.
And I think this actually comes back to, obviously we have a lot of personas we're serving. A lot of founders are using Clarify, but there's also a lot of rev operators using Clarify, and they don't want another person to talk to, right? Having another Zapier, having another iPaaS tool, having another integration to manage is actually a burden. So I think that's some of the hypothesis that we're testing right now and we're learning as the market grows is, do people actually want to have the full flexibility of designing an agent, or do they just want to show up and be taken care of? And I think we're watching that evolve right now in the market.
Do you find that your customers are still leveraging Clarify plus another tool of some sort, or do you feel that they're coming to you and trying to have a kind of truly an all-in-one place where they can do a lot of the different functions that a selling organization would do?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing right now when it comes to product prioritization is that we have a ton of feedback from our customers, which is both good and bad.
Yeah.
They're asking us to build a lot, but I think that's kind of cementing a lot of the kind of all-in-one strategy that we have to be the one place that people can go, both on the pre-sales, sales, and post-sales side. We're an early stage startup, so we only have so much things that we can build. So we do partner with other companies, and we do have customers that use us with other tools. And we have really good open APIs for that, as well as things like Zapier integrations to get data in and out of our system. But yes, our customers are asking us to kind of build a better all-in-one solution for them.
And you guys also recently wrote about this concept of autonomous GTM. It's a thing that I think you wrote with one of our colleagues, Lauren, about, and how teams, again, back to this conversation, are re-architecting the way that they think about going to market with a new set of tools. Can you define a little bit about how you think about this new world of selling and what an autonomous GTM would mean? And specifically, maybe just double-clicking for companies that sell with a more PLG motion and then companies that sell with a more enterprise sales motion. How can an autonomous GTM strategy work for them?
So if autonomous CRM is helping automate the process of selling, autonomous go-to-market is automating the ways that teams themselves operate and sell. And there's a lot of market chatter right now around this new role called the go-to-market engineer. And I actually think that it's the genesis of something that's been happening for a couple of years, which is actually that go-to-market teams are becoming more technical in nature because the systems that they're using are far more technical in nature. The problems that Patrick and I faced when we decided to start Clarify were not new to the industry. Pat was sitting at Amplitude, seeing millions of dollars in spend, working as a pseudo-technical resource with teams to try to understand how these systems work. I was working at Ramp as a Rev and MarTech operator, managing $10 million in a team of 26 to help our massive sales team be successful. And I think that to me actually is the genesis of autonomous go-to-market, is this idea that if you want to be the most successful Rev team in the world, you actually have to apply core EPD principles to the art of revenue generation. So now fast forward today, you have really, really complicated systems, but you also have people who have a deep desire to make the most of that. So, what I think is happening is that you have many more folks who were traditionally in non-technical roles spanning a huge set of skills in sales. So just as an example, Travis on our team, who's an amazing seller, is working in Clarify, working with workflows, working with APIs. I think part of what's happened is there's not only like a necessity to be more technical and go to market, but there's tools gifted by AI that allow people to do that. So what I'm seeing is now there's a big blend across the roles, and you have less division between a salesperson, a sales ops person, deal desk, and then, the sales engineer. And now a lot of those roles, especially at small and medium-sized companies, are just being shared. And what that means is actually, I think in the short run, you're going to have either smaller teams that are more nimble and more resource effective, or you have bigger teams that are just able to produce a lot more volume because they have a vast majority of skills across the team. And what I think this ultimately leads to is this idea, though, that you can effectively automate your entire revenue stack and the way in which you generate revenue by using systems, tools, and people with AI. I still think we're in the really early stages, though. What's kind of not talked about on LinkedIn is just how much work and effort goes into setting up these systems and managing them. This gets back to the idea of the autonomous CRM. There's lots of really cool things you can do with tools now, like even N8N is great, amazing, Zapier, Lovable. There's applications you can build, but the maintenance cost right now is still super high. So we actually had one of our customers do a post with us last year about the 17 different tools they were using on top of their legacy CRM. They actually ended up winding back a lot of those tools when the person who managed them left, because they're saying, okay, well, we thought that having all these tools would help us, enable us to be more successful in revenue generation, but actually what it ended up doing was just creating a lot of maintenance cost. And I think that's maybe a recurring theme and like an unspoken part of the autonomous go-to-market system that we haven't yet discovered.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I'd add there is I do think people are trying to do more with less and or scale quickly, right? And we talk a lot about, even in the context of AI, right? Like the 10-person billion-dollar company, right?
Totally.
And the only way to be able to do that is to be able to build systems that can scale and effectively build your go-to-market motion to scale, regardless if it's a sales-led motion, right? Or a PLG motion, right? Like having spent a lot of time working at companies like Atlassian, right? Where we did have a huge PLG function and then kind of transitioning that over to more of a sales organization over time, and then having working at Amplitude that both had a PLG and sales-led function. It's like the more you can look at things like product usage data, the more intent signals you can look at, the more your sellers are working the right accounts. And so when it comes to, Clarify, like one of the things that we spend a lot of time is just like, how do we get better intent data into the CRM? How do we be able to action product usage data for building things like PQLs or doing upsell or cross-sell opportunities, or even surfacing like retention problems or customers that we should be investing more time into. And that's effectively just, again, looking at the data and making sure that we have the right automations, the right intelligence on top of that, so that the people that we have on our team are more impactful operationally.
Tell us a little bit about your data strategy. Where are you collecting data from? What's your hypothesis on this idea of intent data? Everybody's talking about this as it's kind of like this jewel, but what does that really mean? And how do you actually leverage that into Clarify?
I feel like a lot of this reminds me of the great marketing term in the CDP landscape, which was orchestration. It's like, what actually is orchestration? Nobody really knows, but we all talk about it. It's the same thing here with intent data. I think that a lot of times you have to back up to like, what is the actual customer problem, right? So if the customer is trying to have insight into the meetings they're having and the deals that they're working on, yeah, we provide some of the best class data out there. With intent data in particular, though, I feel like it's become a little bit of a marketing term to capture data that's not always clear. You probably won't get such great data if you're looking at cookies only. And then the outcome is, what are you trying to do with it? Are you trying to pounce on accounts? Well, if you're trying to pounce on accounts, you might as well add like a third-party SDK to your site to kind of try to deeply identify people and then go after them either with a targeted email message or, a website message or something like that. So I think a lot of the times we mix up the marketing term for something new and fancy, when in fact we should just be looking at the customer outcomes we're trying to achieve.
And how clean does the customer data have to be? Do you always have to make it structured so you can help them understand what's behind it and actually utilize that data? Is there a lot of work that you guys have to do for, the agents to go be doing the tasks when it comes to like cleaning up that data, or is it pretty easily accessible now with how you might leverage?
Yeah. So in the context of what we're building, right, there's some level of determinism that you want to build when building out your go-to-market motion. Yes, like agents and AI and LLMs in particular are really good at building and spotting patterns, but we still believe in structured data, right? So when you think about the platform that we built for Clarify, it is really focused on relational data, time series data, and unstructured data. So we look at things like email bodies and call transcripts to be able to spot patterns. Our entire system is event-driven, so we look for, in particular, things like selling intent on an email to decide whether or not we should update a deal or not update a deal. And that's looking at the overall context of the email and understanding your business at a high level. But again, when we go update a deal, we're updating structured fields on that deal for you. And we think that's extremely important because you want to be able to have an entire activity log of all of the updates on that particular deal so you can trace it back, you can improve it. Versus, there's a lot of, I think, folks who are like, hey, I think AI is fairly good. Just throw it into a notebook LLM and make sense of it. That works really good for just general customer intelligence, but it's not really good for building out automations or capabilities to really scale a business.
Yeah, and that insight, I think, came from our time working in CDPs, where you absolutely have to have structured data to meet the needs of downstream marketing tools. But it was actually pretty cool. When we started Clarify and we were talking about the architecture, there was a whole thought process around the idea of what would it look like if you had structured data, but you actually allowed the user to select the interface in which they view that data, which today is not really possible. But you can imagine a world where even if you collect unstructured data and maybe you structure some of it for marketing purposes or analytics purposes, a person could render the view they want on the fly of the data that's most meaningful to them. That's never really been before possible. And I think so much of legacy systems kind of define the mode that you view data and you access data and consume it. And we're entering this world where actually maybe you don't have to have that at all. And maybe you can actually let the end user, the salesperson, the VP, the sales manager, define what they see and therein kind of like control their own go-to-market process.
And you can do this in Clarify because effectively Clarify is just an application layer built on top of a warehouse. So you can define or have the AI define whatever fields are being shown up, whatever relational fields, effectively build a join on the fly or do a thing like a computed field as well. And at the end of the day, we're just rendering SQL that's querying the data warehouse.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're building a system that surfaces insights and analytics even before you ask, right? Like a lot of the smart reminders, I've used this system before where it flags, you need to follow up with this person, or you can show signals that it's been a certain amount of days where you've let this email pass, and how do you make sure that you're on top of some of these sort of things? And so I think it's this idea of surfacing things before you let it slip, which is really, really great.
I think at the end of the day, that's the value that Clarify provides, right? There's a bunch of CRUD applications that you can purchase on the market, traditional CRMs. But at the end of the day, when we think about what we're building effectively the platform for go-to-market teams, plus the agent that interfaces with it. And effectively, the agent is really the value here that we're providing.
One thing that I want to talk about is team and culture. You guys are both founders before building Clarify in the past. We are building in one of the most competitive spaces and times of our lives with AI. There's a fight for a lot of talent. How have you guys found hiring to be, and what are some of the lessons that you're learning in terms of just attracting great talent to Clarify?
One of the things I think we talk a lot about is building the culture to attract great talent.
Yeah.
Right. So I think if you build the right culture, the right people will want to come work for your organization. I think we've done a really good job, and we codified our values and kind of the culture that we wanted to build early on. And in particular, specifically how it comes to hiring engineers. So we think of engineering as part product owners. We really want engineers to own more. We want engineers to really be customer facing, right? So, there's a lot of talk right now within AI companies around forward deployed engineers. Like we kind of live and breathe that model. Like our engineers are the first line of helping customers resolve issues. That's helped attract some really great engineers to our team. Some that we've worked with before and others that are definitely new to the organization. But giving folks a high degree of autonomy and really empowering them to do the best work has made it really easy to hire some awesome talent.
Yeah, I think two other things come to mind too are one, we chose to reach deep into our networks to hire people that we'd previously worked with and folks that we knew, loved, and trust. So that was an advantage that we had as founders and previous operators, just having a large bench to call upon. But I would say, actually, I give Patrick a lot of this credit, is that your job is to be selling everybody on not just the product that they could buy, but the vision for the world. And I think like one thing I've certainly learned from you, Patrick, is that every conversation is an opportunity, not just to sell the person on your product, but to get them to fall in love with the thing that you're doing and building. And so one thing that we've done early on is like we have conversations with people regardless of whether we can sell to them, regardless of whether they're a hire or not. We try to help as many people as we can, because I think the vision in the long run is that the more you put yourself out there, the more you be consultative in nature, the more you just try to have good karma and help people in whatever they're trying to do, the more that's going to come back to you. And I think one example of that really paying off is we've had hires where they didn't work out and then came back a year later.
Yeah.
We had a hire where we thought maybe we'd sell to them and they became a customer. We had a hire where there was no chance in heck they were ever going to leave their job. And now they're working for us and having a great time. And so I think the lesson, if there is one for founders, is just like never miss an opportunity to just lean into a relationship and try to provide value. Now I know this is hard because everybody's busy. And so you have to like have some, level of judiciousness with your time, but you definitely live and breathe this. And I feel like that's really influenced me and Andre and a lot of the team and just how we think about serving, like working in service to others.
This also goes into sell. There's never a no. It's just a not now.
I love that. Okay, as we close out here, I want to ask a couple of final questions as we think about kind of the bigger picture and the future for Clarify. As we think about 2026, what do we think the go-to-market team of the future looks like? What roles are changing? What roles may disappear or what new ones may emerge?
There's a couple of things here that I'd love to touch on. I think there's generally convergence back into kind of like a unified account manager role, right? Where you don't have the divergence across pre-sales, sales, and post-sales. I think most of this, because you have the tools and you can kind of enable these motions at scale now, that you tend to have an account manager that owns the entire relationship. Whereas I think previously there was a lot of different handoffs. But because you want sales, and primarily with AI, sales to be much more authentic today, you really want somebody to build a relationship with a customer. And I think that's what you're going to have, this convergence back into this account manager role. And you've kind of seen this with post-sales moving into, I'd say like companies investing less in post-sales, not more in post-sales. And then additionally in the pre-sales side, a lot more investment generally in market into like automated SDRs, BDRs. And I think that will increase volume over time. But generally, you still need that handoff to an account manager to actually run the sales process.
I also think that teams are just going to become more technical in nature. We're going to see more engineering involvement in revenue tech and revenue teams in general. The line between growth engineer and systems engineer and rev ops is totally blurred. Now you just have one person who can actually work across all those different disciplines to just deliver value. And I think that no matter if we achieve our mission not of making a fully autonomous CRM, there's always going to be people who want to use APIs and build their own custom applications on top, especially if we go to the enterprise. And so what I think that means, though, is that if you have a world where API and technically driven systems are kind of table stakes, then you're going to have tech teams embedded inside of sales teams. That's going to continue to occur, and it's only going to get better, especially as things like, APIs come out, MCP servers come out. Now you can get to a world where actually the work of a single engineer could have replaced an entire team of 10 working on integrations between 15 different tools. Maybe you just have 1 to 2 tools and then an engineer writing custom code on top of MCP servers to a bunch of different tools, handling the kind of custom work that used to be a multi-million-dollar division. I think that's not a crazy, thing to see in the next 5 years.
That's fascinating. Okay, so for founders listening, what is the most high leverage thing they can do today to build towards this autonomous go-to-market future?
Just make sure that you're prepping your sellers as well, right? The people that you're hiring on the go-to-market side, that they're used to using these tools. My favorite question to ask in any interview, but primarily with AEs and BDRs, SDRs, is tell me how you use AI, right? Are your folks that you're hiring, are they AI literate, right? Are you hiring people, this is a standard question. If I was to hire an engineer right now, I'd want to know how they're using Claude Code or Cursor or Windsurf.
Yeah.
But, we don't think about asking those same questions on the go-to-market side about how does an AE use Claude or ChatGPT to do account planning and account prep. And you should be drilling this into your team, right? Like, hey, we're going to get left behind if we're not investing in AI and we're not at the forefront of what this is offering us. The alpha right now for companies is to really lean in on that. And yes, Clarify is a part of that story.
Awesome. Well, everybody heard it here first. You got to use Clarify, give it a try. I think it will truly change the way that you do selling and just think about what it means to build the future of a go-to-market team. So to wrap us today, just a fun question. What is one lesson from this journey, even just in the past 12 months, that each of you knew maybe going in, before starting Clarify for founders that are listening? What is something that they can take away with them?
The team is everything. Just build a great team. That'll carry half of the way there.
One thing I was thinking about is, Pat and I have both been through a lot of different startups, and he founded Iteratively. I built a small company. I've been working for 4 different founders in my lifetime. And I thought when we started Clarify that we would make the best company that ever existed, because we'd learned all the things that you can possibly learn about startups after working for 4 or 5 founders, or 7 or 8 between all of us. And the thing that I actually learned is that no matter how hard you try, it's still going to be a beautiful mess. So my advice to founders would be just embrace the fact that it's going to be messy. Embrace the fact that you're going to do things wrong. Things are going to go awry. All the expectations you have about prior building, you can still apply. And there's going to be new, unknown parts of the equation that kind of come up throughout the process. And so just lean into the fact that building startups is messy, and that's half the fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Pat, Austin. This was a lot of fun for me, and very glad to have you on.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Thanks for having us, Sabrina.